What is it?
The main thing I got from it was like this sense of feeling seen and validated.
Well, why does it have to be this way?
This book was placed in my hand for this moment.
Insightful, learned a lot, wrote some quotes that I'm ready to like paint on my wall.
I love this book!
That we just kind of pull out some of the big themes that we see and talk about a few different ones.
I apologize if most of my contribution has K-pop references.
Alternative book title, The Feminine Mystique Part 2. You were really just gay all along. Welcome to Book Club.
With Julia!
And Victoria.
Those hot girls that carry safety books with them. And we'd like to be your book friends.
This is a podcast for the books we just can't shut up about.
And this week, we've got a little mini-sode for everyone. Victoria just got back from the AWP conference, which I learned stands for the Association of Writers and Writing Programs, which was not what I thought it stood for. But she got to nerd out with like a few thousand book friends, and book friends are like what this podcast is for. So we wanted to talk about it, about her experiences, and then more generally about like networking and being around your people as an adult, and we wanted to get into it.
I know, if someone would have told me like, when we started this podcast 4 years ago, someday you're going to do a mini-sode about conferences. And you're like, oh, dear Lord, what weird adulty turn did this podcast make? But we're talking about conferences, or other people might call it like a con, like Comic-Con, or festivals. That vibe of like showing up and there's like 1,000 people and you like immediately have something to talk about with them with, because you're like, you like this thing I like? Cool. Mm-hmm. This is going to be fun.
Exactly. Very quickly, if you'd like to support the show, you can rate, review, and subscribe on all of your preferred podcast platforms. If you look down in the show notes and you click on a book link in our show notes, that will take you to our affiliate page on bookshop.org, where if you buy a book on there, we get a very small kickback. And then if you'd like to join the club, if you'd like to join the party and become a member, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/bookclubwithjv and subscribe for as little as $3 a month. We're saving up to get a transcription service so that we can have transcripts for all of our episodes on our website and make it more accessible. Some things that we make just for members. We're currently releasing some film club episodes where we review book to TV and book to film adaptations. So our most recent one was the 2019 David Copperfield with Dev Patel, and we are currently working through Daisy Jones and the Six adaptation on Amazon Prime. Come hang out. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great stuff on there, and we love to hear from you.
Okay, so Julia.
Yes.
Can you think of a time that you've been in like a very large social setting, which I know for you and I does not happen that much.
Yeah.
Particularly for you. But a very big social setting and been like, OMG, these are my people.
So I feel like I don't ever feel totally at home when there are like more than 3 people present.
Right.
Like, it's just, I'm never fully at ease. I'm never fully like, yes, I belong here. This is exactly where I should be right now. But if I'm thinking about moments where I've felt like connected to a big group, when we went to that Florence concert.
Yeah.
Like Florence and the Machine fans, I don't know that I would say those are my people or that I identify myself by my, love of Florence and the Machine. But the kind of concert environment that she creates it's almost like a spiritual experience. Like you just suddenly feel so connected to everyone around you and you're just like, we are one, we are all family. Like we were holding hands and singing, and that was probably the first thing that came to mind.
That was actually one of my experiences too that first came to mind was the Florence concert because, it was at the United Center, which is one of the largest venues here in Chicago. It's ginormous. And those concerts the few times I've gone to United Center concerts, it's like you're seeing a huge name act. You're excited to be there. There's a lot of buzz, but you're also like in a bleacher 700 feet from the stage.
Right.
Like you're so far away. The fact that we could be in the upper level and still feel like we were having a moment with Florence and connecting with like all the people sitting next to us. I usually don't like make friends at concerts unless it's like a mutual acquaintance, like a friend of a friend shows up, then I'll chit chat. But yeah, we were like having moments. It was a good time.
I don't want to place too high of expectations on the absolute concert of my dreams that I now have tickets to go to. When I'm going to see Suga and for his August tour in Chicago, like Suga fans were a particular subset of people. You know what I mean? Like there's different sort of within the BTS umbrella. There's sort of clans based on who your favorites are, and there tends to be certain qualities. Like if you meet another one, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I like you. I haven't met a Suga fan that I have not liked. So I don't want to put too high of expectations on it, but I feel like I may have that experience there where I'm just gonna be like, everyone here is my friend. These are my people. Hello.
Similarly, my preferred social setting is like a small group. So yeah, I honestly, I had so much work to do leading up to this conference because I did go as like a member of a team of a publishing house that I work with. And so it was like, okay, we have to get all of our stock in order so we can sell our books. We need to, like, I was in charge of all of the logistics. I love logistics, but it was just like a lot of work leading up to this conference that I didn't really have a second to think about like, oh, this is going to be fun. You know, I was just like, I got to get there. I got to get all the things done. It'll be cool to see my coworkers, but like, we're just speeding along. And then I showed up in Seattle for AWP and I was like, oh wait, yeah, this is going to be super cool. Like, yeah, I remember messaging you, Julia, being like, I think I'm high on social interaction. Like I am having so much fun. I'm in such a good mood. Like, is this how extroverts feel? Cause like, wow, this is wild. Like I had spent like 4 hours that day at our booth talking with readers and some authors. I'm like, this is so exciting. And then I went around to a bunch of booths and like, I had a chance to talk with some of the presses that published books we've covered on the show. Mm-hmm. So I stopped by Milkweed. They published Braiding Sweetgrass, which we just had an episode coming out about the book. So I was like, hey, Milkweed, you don't know me, but I know you. I like your books. And then I had a great chat with one of the staffers there and bought one of their books. Went over to Europa, which is a publishing house that does the translations of Ferrante into English. And they were super cool. I had a great time chatting with them. Stopped by Yale University Press, who publishes Simona Roy's How I Became a Tree. So it was a delight. It was so fun. It was so fun to walk up and be like, I know your book. And like, we could have a conversation about it. I love talking with book people, but usually like the first part of the conversation, which isn't bad. It's just the necessity of like, oh, what do you like to read? What have you read recently? Trying to figure out where you have common interests. Whereas I'm walking up to these presses and I can point at their book and be like, I love this. Let's talk about it. And then we stand there for like 10 minutes, like fangirling over, you know, an author we're really enjoying, or they're giving me recommendations. And I'm getting excited, spending all my money. But a lot of the presses too, I think one of the fun things is this book fair. So that's where I spent most of my time, is a giant book fair. Everyone's got their stuff on discount. Everyone's having a good time. People like will swap books, which I thought was cool. I saw a couple times like an author or publisher walk by and they'd already like, oh yeah, we're doing a 1-for-1. And so they just like hand each other their books.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's so fun. And like the last day there was like a literary magazine walking around and they're like, we've got extra copies. Who wants a copy? And it's like this beautiful cover of Joan Didion. I'm so excited to read it because it's a big Joan Didion feature. So yeah, it was just like super fun. That's just the book fair. I haven't even talked about like the actual conference part. Like they have panels and sessions. And so I got to see Nana Kwame Aje Branya speak. He wrote Friday Black, which we've covered here on the pod. Silvia Moreno Garcia was there. She wrote Mexican Gothic, which we've also talked about in the pod. I've also read her book, The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. But yeah, it was just like really cool to like be there and like the groundwork of like, so what are you into? You like to read? Oh, you like to read too? Oh, cool. Now let's talk about books. Right. That's already covered completely. You're talking with people who are like, what kind of books do you read? What do you write? And people getting like super deep really fast about like our niche interests. So it was a delight. I came home with so many books. And because everything was cheaper and discounted, I probably only spent like less than $100 for sure on books. And I had like half a suitcase full on the way back. And I was just like, this is so fun.
Oh, that's amazing.
Plus, I got to meet up with a listener of the pod who's emailed us. And we're planning to have him on the show as a guest soon. And it was so fun to like shake hands in person and be like, walk in and have like mutual interests, even some like mutual friendship already. Mm-hmm. Which conferences do you go to? I know you also went to one in Seattle recently.
I did. I went to the AAA conference, which is the American Anthropological Association, not the insurance.
I was like, you went to the AAA car insurance.
Yeah, not the
Conference.
insurance, but they also call it AAA. And I was like, you guys know that that's also another thing, right? And it just, yeah. When I was doing my field work in Seattle, like doing my anthropological field work, the American Anthropological Association conference was in Seattle. It was crazy. So I think I went to the first 3 days, but I was there by myself, so I was just like going back to my hostel. I couldn't like talk over my thoughts with anyone, except I did call Victoria. I think we had a podcast meeting in the middle of the day. When I was there, I texted one of my friends in my program here, and I was like, I love doing anthropology. I am terrified of anthropologists. Like, just as a group of people, they are very difficult to be around. It's like the super insecure liberal white people who are like trying too hard and will correct you on every single thing you say wrong. That's who you're hanging out with. And it's like, if you talk with them one-on-one, you're like, oh, you're just like a really anxious person who loves doing research. And, if we find some common ground, we could probably have a good time. But like just the level of tension of people trying to say the right things and ask the right questions. And I learned a lot, but it's not an environment I think I would ever want to go back to. I'm like, can we all just like calm down? It's okay.
So as much as I'm like, I had such a good time at EWP, I have definitely been to conferences where I've also felt like, that was fine.
Yeah.
I've been to several like industry conferences for content marketing as well as international education. And the content marketing conference was fun. It was like a 1-day thing here in Chicago. So it was kind of low commitment. I went with some coworkers. I was working in-house on a marketing team that was like really smart and agile. And there was about 10 of us. But otherwise I wasn't really like, I didn't go to school for marketing. I wasn't super involved in like a marketing professional association or anything like that. So it was really cool to like, oh, cool. Like we're all into marketing. That's awesome. But marketing is so broad. Content marketing is a subset, but even then it's like a huge subset. So I'm talking to people who they work at an agency and they're one of like 400 people at their company who does marketing. I'm talking with people who have ginormous budgets for their marketing team, or I'm talking to someone who is the sole marketer of her nonprofit. And even then I'm like, oh, I can't even relate to you because I'm on a team of 10, like it was just the breadth of experience and like where people are coming from was huge. It was fun. I feel like I learned a lot, but I'm going to make friends here never felt like that was happening.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of, because I grew up going to dance conventions and all of my experiences with stuff like that, I don't really love when people sort of worship the thing that they're there to talk about, It's like, I feel uncomfortable when people take whatever it is they're doing too seriously and think it's like the only thing in the world and the best thing in the world, and they won't hear any negative about it, and they won't talk about like the actual nuances of whatever it's really like, and they want to put on this sort of persona of what they think they're supposed to be or what the industry is supposed to be or whatever it may be. There's this sort of facade, I feel like. You're supposed to kind of toe the line of a certain message or image, or you're not allowed to say anything bad. We're not allowed to talk about that. We're not allowed to say anything bad about that. You can't cross that line. I hate that. I really hate that. And I feel like conferences can lead into that so quickly.
Yeah, into that like single-mindedness of like, this is what we identify as, like
yeah.
Everyone here is a content marketer. Content marketing is this, to make it like such the like central connection point. It's kind of like what I was just celebrating, which was, oh, you walk around and everyone already has a common interest. How fun is that? But if you kind of take it too far where you're like, is everyone's here identity this one thing that is only a small facet of my own life? I think what a lot of people like about conferences is, oh, these are my people I see every year. So it's like, oh, like for AWP, there's definitely it seemed like a lot of people who like, they go every year. They've gone for so many years. And they're like, this is when I see my friends. And like every coffee shop and lunch spot that I stopped at near the conference, it was just people meeting up and catching up. And I would like overhear conversations of like people who met when they were at their MFA programs and people who, know each other just tangentially or they're friends outside of this. And this is just like an excuse to all be in the same city and hang out. Yeah, this conference, I didn't feel like a big pressure to go to sessions as much. I think I went to like 2 3/4 sessions over 3 days, whereas most conferences I've been to, I go to like at least 3 or 4 sessions every day.
So what were you doing instead then, if you weren't going to sessions?
I hate the word networking. I feel like it's almost cliche to say I hate the word networking. It's kind of that fraught term because it conjures that idea of like someone hands you their business card and then you immediately forget who they are and what they do when they walk away. I think that kind of helped this conference. Like I didn't go in with like any networking goals. I didn't really think about that until like day 2 of like, oh, you know what? I could probably go chat up some of the publishers that Julie and I have either received galleys from or we've bought books from, or I just like their stuff and I think they publish cool books. I'll go talk to them. I talked to some of my colleagues who they've been to AWP multiple times, and most of them said the first time they went, they were like fresh out of undergrad or they were in an MFA program and they were very much like putting pressure on themselves as a writer to like make connections. Like this is going to be quote unquote the thing that, you know, gets me published, gets my name out there, gets me like the context I need in the industry to launch a publishing career. And I think if I had that perspective going in, yeah, it would have been totally overwhelming because it's like, where do you even start? Yeah, I think for me at least, walking in with any sort of real networking goal is like a recipe to be disappointed and exhausted. Yeah. I had the most fun talking with people like I already had a connection with. Like the one podcast listener that I've been emailing with a little bit, like we met up and said hi in person because like we already knew of each other. I think there was like one person I met for the first time at AWP that we didn't know before that now we have contact info and we have like corresponded briefly. And it was mainly on her. She was there at the conference alone and like she was just cool. We invited her along to dinner, had a great time, just hanging out, getting to know her as a person. And then at the end of the night, a conversation came up where I was like, oh wait, I think I might know someone who's a good fit for like the kind of work you do. Let me get your email and I'll send you their contact info. But that came after like many hours of just like being a human and like making a friend. And so I'm like walking away being like, I made like one friend. I don't know what her objective was going as alone. That's like a lot of pressure to like go make friends. But she was saying too, she's like, yeah, if I go to a conference alone, I tend to like just try to find a group, you know, like just like make friends and then like hang out instead of like trying to bounce around and do a lot.
Yeah, networking is such an intimidating term. I think the best description of networking I've ever seen is where you're at a party talking to someone and you say like, oh, I'm really interested in getting into XYZ. And the person you're talking to is like, oh, my friend does that. And then they lean over and go, hey, she's thinking of doing the same thing. And then they're like, oh, cool. And then you like talk about it like that, you know, it's like talking to friends of friends or people you have some kind of connection with already about what you do and what you like and what you're interested in. It's just making friends. But it's like knowing how to ask about what you're interested in and being brave enough to say what your goals are, you know what I mean? Then verbalizing them around other people so that they know and have that in mind so that they can make connections within their kind of network. You know what I mean? It's like having people in your corner who know what you're into. And a lot of it is just following your passion. You know, us making this podcast, we're like, we just really want to make it really well. And we'll see what happens. And then when you're around people who have written the books that we've talked about, you just bring up, we make a podcast. We talked about your book. We really loved it. That's the scariest part, right? Is you say that.
I make a podcast. That's the scariest part.
Yeah. It's you say the thing that you really care about that maybe you're a little insecure about, but that matters a lot to you around people you already have some kind of connection with, you know? It's not this sort of mysterious thing that everyone makes it out to be. And it's also not trying to talk to every single person in a room or at a conference, or it's also not like social climbing. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that you're meeting people just to get something from them. It's more on your end of verbalizing your own passions and interests and goals. Because otherwise it feels kind of gross.
Yeah, if it's just like, I want to talk to that person because they know this other person and I want an introduction so that I can have the clout of knowing that person or like have their eyes on what I'm doing. It's like, that's weird. Also, I think for me, networking has always been odd in an industry sense when I'm not super passionate about the industry, if that makes sense. If I'm going to geek out about something, it's going to be like our podcast and our books. Like the things that we literally create a podcast to geek about our favorite books.
Yeah.
And so it's just easier to talk about things I'm passionate about. My only advice to anyone networking is like, if you don't feel like talking about the thing that you feel like you should network about, maybe reconsider if that's the thing you want to be doing or the way you want to go about it. You know, like you could really love a thing, but it's not really something you want to just sit around at parties talking about. Then maybe that's not your networking space. Maybe just enjoy the party and not try to make it like a thing. And I think it's fun too when you do have like a niche interest, because I spend so much of my time thinking about this stuff and talking about it. It is cool to like bounce it off other people and hear what they're doing. I think I'm most excited about practicing talking about myself, if that makes sense. When it comes to our podcast, it comes up, you know, with friends and with family and work colleagues, or recently someone I work with quite frequently was like, wait, you have a podcast? And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a huge book nerd. How we've not talked about this before. So that's always fun. And I think this was like the first time where I was like walking up to booths where I'm like, I know you published this book that I've talked about on my podcast, and I just want to say hi and thank you for publishing such a great book. Also, let me leave you with my little bookmark business card thing. Maybe they'll listen to our show. Just getting that practice of like, yeah, I have a book podcast here. Do you want to learn about it? But just like, yeah, that practice of like talking about things I'm excited about and not feeling like embarrassed to be kind of self-promoting.
Yeah. It feels weird. It feels very weird.
There's a a board game convention in Indianapolis.
Oh,
I have my eye on because I'm like, I could stay with my parents. I can hang out and do board game things and make some board game friends. Bring my board game friends to make more board game friends. Like, I don't know if I'll go, but
that sounds great.
I'm excited for that. Are there any conferences that you want to go to? Anything you've got your eye on?
The Our Flag Means Death cast is making the rounds of the cons this year. And it's like the first time I'm like, I kind of want to go.
Yeah.
I can't this year, but I mean, I think there's going to be a season 3, so maybe I'll go next year. At least online, I feel very, very comfortable with Our Flag Means Death fans in every space that I've sort of interacted, and the cast and crew, like they're actually people that I would want to like get to know and be friends with. And I have a bunch of friends who watch the show, so like we could go together. Like it's kind of the first time where I'm like, I think I would want to like go to a con.
The nice thing too about a lot of the cons, like the Comic Cons and stuff, those conventions typically have day passes too, which I think is more accessible. You know, you could just pay for the Our Flag Means Death Day. Yeah. When they have their panel, hit up the, you know, exhibit hall, hit up another panel and like have a good time. Yeah, there's a fan expo is coming to Chicago. That'll be my first Comic-Con if I go. And then I'm excited because the next like book festival I'm going to is the Printers Row Lit Fest. It's here in Chicago. I live right by Printers Row, so I literally just like walk down the street, talk about a local conference. Like I could like eat lunch at home and then go back. AWP in 2024 is in Kansas City, which at first I was like, and then someone was telling me how cool Kansas City is. I'm like, okay.
I think my ultimate dream for our podcast is to be able to record a live episode with an audience at some kind of book conference or some kind of nerd convention. You know, wherever we happen to fit in, I think that, like, to me, that's like the ultimate dream. That's what I really, really want to do. You know, like just hearing, I was getting sort of live updates of Victoria being like, look who I talked to! Look at the books I got! And I was like so excited, and I had this big smile on my face getting these texts at like 2 a.m. my time, because I was like, Victoria is the networking face of our podcast, because I'm just not very good at self-promotion or explaining what it is we make. Like a lot of times I don't want people to know anything about me. So
Says the woman who like literally puts her voice, stories, and experiences on the internet every other week for the whole world to hear. If we went to a podcasting convention in like London or something, you know, it's close to you, it's not too far for me to fly, and like how fun would it be to meet up in like a city elsewhere and like just hang out and brainstorm our podcast together.
We'll get there very, very slowly, but we'll get there.
Coming to a conference near you, 2028. Closing out, what are things that you are currently obsessed with? What's floating your boat these days?
I don't don't know. I feel like every spring, not quite spring, but like February through April or May, there's just like a flood of new music. And this also happens in like August and September. Hosier dropped a new EP today. Soyoon from the indie rock band Say So Neon has a new solo album that's really good. We were talking about BTS earlier. Jimin's pre-release single came out today, and oh my god. What a way to start my morning. I was not prepared. So I'm sure by the time you're hearing this, his whole album is out and the world has imploded and we are just living in the ashes. And I hope it's great. Boy Genius's album comes out in 2 weeks and their pre-release singles have been on repeat in my ears forever. And so I am so stoked about that album. I think it's going to be amazing. And what a time to be alive. So much music.
I've actually watched movies this week. I know, wild. I don't watch many movies. But
wow!
I watched Tar in 2 sittings because holy cow, that's a long movie. But it was great. And I have thoughts. And then I immediately had to text my friend who I knew has seen it. We had long thoughts together. I had to go listen to a podcast of people talking about it because I wanted to hear what other people thought. You're a big Cate Blanchett fan, right?
I am a hardcore Cate Blanchett stan.
That's why I was like a little surprised you said you hadn't watched it yet. I was like, I thought you would have been on this.
It just got here to Belgium, but I'm going to see it on Monday.
I also watched Return to Seoul. It's a French film about a 25-year-old French woman who returns to Korea. She was adopted as an infant to a French family, and it was really good. Farina and I left the theater and just kind of sad. No surprises. Like my idea of like a French film that wins a bunch of awards it's going to be a little sad. Thanks to Sophia's recommendation in Braiding Sweetgrass, I'm watching RRR tonight. I mean, I also watched them win the Oscar for Best Original Song, which was a delight. So it's happening tonight. Having some friends over to watch a movie that is so long where they have intermissions. So I'm like gearing up. Okay, here we go. Get the snacks ready. Time the bathroom breaks. It's going to be great. Well, thanks all for joining, and let us know what you're nerding out. What kind of conferences, conventions, festivals do you head to? Are there any that we should be going to? We want to know. We may not. I mean, I can handle like 2 a year. So
remember who we are and then, recommend things accordingly.
Thank you for listening to Book Club with Julia and Victoria. We would love to hear your thoughts on this book or the topic we discussed, so you can share your review and recommendations with us on Instagram at BookClubWithJV, on our website, bookclubwithjv.com, or by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also visit our website for show notes with links to all of the recommendations and the things bringing us joy. If you don't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever podcast platform you are listening on so that you can be notified when our next episode is released. This episode was co-hosted and produced by myself, Victoria Bruick, along with Julia Clausen. Rebecca Gasney provides us with project management support. Our music is composed by Greg Bruick, and our logo was designed by Gabby Fabland. Until next time, happy reading.